בסוכה stage ושבעת ימים. למען ידע דורסיכם, כי בסוכה ישבתי את בני ישראל. So Poshe Pshat, how we learn this is that the sukkah is a zeichet to the uncanny YAKOV'S. When Klal Yisrael went out of Mitzrayim, they're in the Midbar. Midbar is not a place that's human friendly, and therefore they needed the uncanny YAKOV'S to allow for them to experience the Midbar in conditions that they could handle, in conditions that they could survive. But obviously, the uncanny YAKOV'S are something spiritual, something more meaningful, something that created for Klal Yisrael an environment where they can grow, where they can understand Torah, where they can become closer to their purpose. So in the Zohar, it calls the sukkah, when a person sits in the sukkah, he's sitting b'tzila de memnisa, sitting in the shadow of Emuna. So what does that mean, sitting in a shadow? And we see this concept of shadow many times in the Torah, like David HaMelech says, Gam ki elech begeit salmoves, lo ira ro ki ata modi. When I go begeit salmoves, in the valley of the shadow of death. So what's that shadow that we're talking about? And David HaMelech says, lo ira ro, I'm not afraid, even in the shadow of death, I'm not afraid. Ki ata modi, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is even there too. So we see this concept of a shadow of death, and in the sukkah we have a shadow of Emuna. So what is a shadow? A shadow physically is when there's light and there's something blocking the light, so a person can sit in that shadow. So for example, if the sun is very strong and a person cannot handle the sun, it's too strong, so then he goes into the shadow and he hides within the shadow so that the sun can't hurt him. So when we're sitting in the shadow of Emuna, we're sitting b'tzila de memnusa, it means that we have gotten to an understanding after Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that the Emuna itself is so big, is so strong, is so powerful that we need to sit in the shade of the Emuna. We need to have shade, we need to protect ourselves. And this is why we have sukkah. The sukkah is a concept of protection, a concept of schach. However, it's not the type of protection where you're shutting something out. The purpose of the tzel over here is not to hide from something. The purpose of the tzel is to be able to withstand something, to be able to get closer to something. That's why we leave the diras aray, we leave the house, yes, and with the diras kvar, and we go into the diras aray, we go into the tzel, we go into the place where we can live within the shadow of belief. And this is what we see that Chazal teach us when Mashiach will come. And the Goyim are going to say, well, if you give us mitzvahs, we can keep them too. Because Baruch Hu is going to give them the mitzvah of Sukkah, and then is going to be moitzi chama min atik, is going to make it extremely hot. And people won't be able to withstand. And then the siman of who belongs in the Sukkah is going to be, how did they leave? Did they walk out? Or do they kick the sukkah on the way out? Somebody who kicks the sukkah on the way out, it means that he wasn't here for the right purpose. He didn't get it. He didn't really connect. And so we realize from here that the chamo is always talking about a person's realization, a person's recognizing the truth. And therefore, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is moitzi chama min atika, when a person's realization go beyond what he can handle, where he looks at the concept that he's talking about and he actually sees it for what it is, he doesn't just see the words that he's playing with, he sees the concept itself, it's way too hot, it's way too strong for a person to be able to interact with it. And the same thing goes for our belief. What we believe and we claim we believe every day, every morning, is way too hot for us to really believe. If we would really believe what we say we believe, we wouldn't be able to withstand it for one moment. Because if it's so true, if it's so real, and if every little variance really counts, then how can we go through a single moment? How can we even take our next breath? And therefore, when we want to find simcha, when we want to find peace, it's not by exposing fully what we believe. It's by hiding in the shade of what we believe. It's by hiding betzila de memnusa. It's by recognizing that this truth, even though if we look at it face to face, we would think that it's dangerous, this truth is actually protecting us. Because even our ability to deny the truth was also given to us by the truth. And as long as we're not at the level where we can handle the truth, we expose ourselves to it slowly, in phases, by becoming more and more close to ultimately what we want to understand, what we want to believe. We want to live a life where we believe, but the level of belief is different for each one of us. If somebody were to be fully exposed to the truth, he wouldn't be able to withstand. Not because it's bad, but because it's too good. There's a limit of how much good a person can understand and can integrate into himself and can digest without hurting himself. And we see this by Yakov Avinu. That Yakov Avinu didn't have Yosef Tzadik for 22 years. When they wanted to tell him, even though it was very good, why should we let him suffer even for one more moment? But they wouldn't tell him right away. They couldn't tell him right away. So if for Yakov Avinu, just finding his son, even though obviously it has tremendous implications, but nevertheless, it's not the same as recognizing that the Creator that created all is looking out for your best interest. So therefore, if Yaakov Avinu couldn't handle even a message within reality, even one part of reality that should be different, he couldn't handle. Imagine if somebody were to transform all your reality to the extent that you realize how good it is, we wouldn't be able to withstand. We wouldn't be able to survive. And this is what happened to Klal Yisrael by Matan Torah. That as soon as Kadosh Baruch Hu told them, "Anoich Hashem Elokecha," so finally they understood how to be mechaven. What does this Anoich Hashem Elokecha really mean? What does it really represent in our actual life, in our experience? Not in words, not in concepts, not in ideas, but in reality. As soon as they saw that reality, they couldn't withstand. They couldn't withhold that tremendous message. Couldn't live. And this is why on Sukkos we also are makriv the Shivim Purim, which is against the Shivim Umas, meaning that all of us need existence from the Makar, even though his kedusha and his chachma and his chayas is so beyond that even Klal Yisrael, even people who dedicated their entire life to contemplate it, they still can't contemplate it and survive. So we need to be the channel to give chayas to the Shivim Umas, to give life force to the Shivim Umas. Why? Because if you bring them in to even where we can withstand, even in the sukkah they can't withstand. Because if HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Motzi Cham and Atika, meaning he shows the truth, even the sukkah won't be enough for them. Sometimes we're okay. If we have a proper sukkah, if we properly feel like we can rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu fully, then we can withstand the words of the message. But for people who have not dedicated their life, have not dedicated their time, they have other interests, they have other things that are more important to them, they still want to do this, that, and the other, because in their mind they've built up tremendous importance in certain areas, they can't withstand the message, even just the words of the message. Even just knowing that that's the truth, that's the reality, that somebody made this and there's a specific way of how he made it, even just that knowledge they cannot withstand. And so when the Torah speaks about Onan, it's talking about a reality that is not fully defined. Ba'amud Onan yedaber aleim. Kadosh Baruch Hu always comes down with the Onan. In the Oil Moed, when they saw the Onan, then they knew that there's a Shos HaShechina. Why did the Shechina come with the Onan? Because a person in his clear faculties, he cannot withstand this reality. He cannot withstand this message. So the Onan makes it hazy. It makes it more difficult to see through. It puts a person in a trance state, in a state where he's not fully grounded, and then he can tap into higher realities, higher truth. He doesn't fully recognize what it really means for his daily life while he's perceiving it. This is like Chazal teaches on the Pasuk, Mirochik Hashem Niro Li, that sometimes a person can only see HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mirochik, because when he's Korov, if he'll get a glimpse, he'll pass out. But when he's Rochik, then he could look. It's like a person that wants to go see the Melech, and when he comes to the palace, when he sees the whole Seder Advarim that's going on in the king's palace, he loses his courage that he built up all his way. He wants to come ask from the king something. As soon as he sees the whole Chelech, he sees the pachad of the avodim, he sees how they interact with just the melech's drink, so then he understands that maybe he's in over his head a little bit. Maybe he's got to think through his message one more time, how he's going to say it and what he's going to say. But when a person is standing from the far looking at the king's palace, he can even laugh at the king in his heart. Not too difficult. Because merochok, we can talk about things, we can understand things, we can talk and pretend like we know. But when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes close, then everything melts. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence makes everything melt, makes everything seem like it's too short, it's too temporary, it's too meaningless. So David HaMelech says, Gam ke'elech begeit salmoves. He says, a person, as long as he's in this world, he hasn't faced death. Death we only face once. But salmoves, we can face every single day. The shadow of death, we can feel, like people call it, the cold finger of death on our shoulder, way before we die. We can feel it even as a child. Because all we need is for our mind, for our spirit to present to itself that reality, that fear, and then we're living in the shadow of it. Living in the shadow means you're not experiencing the actual thing. You're experiencing what it leaves behind. Thinking about death puts a shadow. What's the shadow? Is that life doesn't come in there anymore. There's a darkness. So David HaMelech says, Gam ke'elech begeit salmoves. Even when I see the shadow of death, meaning life is not shining on me, because death has taken away the light of life. Lo yirora. I'm still not afraid. Ki ato imodi. Even the shadow is light. Every existence is light. If it exists, it's light. Because the Shem Havaya is the one that gives life to everything that exists. As soon as it exists, even if it only exists at a shadow, then it is light. The difference between the open light and the shadow is simply in how it's dressed up. What's the levush that it's wearing? The tzila, the meimnusa, and the tzal moves are essentially the same. He's just dressed differently. Both of them are a way of existence. Both of them are a flavor of reality. Both of them are experiences that a human mind, a human spirit, the human neshama can experience. And everything that can be experienced was created for the same cause, from the same root, for the same purpose. And so when a person lives in that place, that Gam ke'elech begeit salmoves lo yirora ki ato imodi, that's the shoresh of tshuva. That's why David HaMelech, who a gever, who kamara shel tshuva, because David HaMelech was the one that taught the world how to do tshuva. How did he teach the world how to do tshuva? Because he taught the world that even when a person goes into places that seem to be contrary to everything that he believes, they seem to be contrary to everything that he feels should be, they seem to be contrary to everything that he's taught himself and others have taught him of how you can be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it doesn't mean he's far from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It means that he is now dressed up HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that's far from him. It's a dress, it's a tzel. Because ultimately, the experience itself, the moves itself, or the meimnus itself, the emunah itself, both of them are HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Both of them are the same experience, essentially. Both of them are experiencing existence. Without existence, there is no fear of death. There is no death. And this is how people in those generations would conquer death. Death was an event that happens in life. It's one of the events that happen in life. Just like life contains within it different phases. The boy that's born is going to have a bris milah, he's going to have a bar mitzvah, he's going to have a chasana by Hashem. He's also going to pass on. So all these are part of existence. They're part of life. And our fear from the tzal moves is what separates us from life. A person who is afraid of death doesn't live. Because always he's in denial of his real experience. Always he's not really seeing what's happening to him, because he's hiding from something that's within this truth, that's within this reality. We are here in this world for a period of time. That's the nature of life. If you think of life in any other terms, then you're not thinking of life. You're thinking of some made-up concept in your mind that doesn't exist. And as you try to protect that made-up concept, you're not going to be living life. Life is time. That's all it is. It's time for you to develop and evolve and become something that you can potentially be. And you have a chance to try to become that thing as long as you're attached to your body. As long as you're within your body, you have the ability to develop into something that currently you cannot understand that you are. And as soon as we lose our body, we lose access to that type of evolution. And sometimes we decide to come back. Sometimes what we've done and the way we understand it is not good enough for us, and we want to try again. We want to do more. We want to develop more. And then there's a whole cheshbon of how this works. Certain parts stay, certain parts go. But there's a cheshbon of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created for us so that we can all become that thing that we need to become in order to have permanence, in order to be a ben olam haba, in order to have existence, to have chaye olam. So the chaye olam, he didn't give it to you as a gift. The chaye olam is a netiyah. Netzer matai masa yodai leispar. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu implanted within us a seed of potential that if it grows, if it manifests, becomes eternity. And in order to manifest that reality, we have to be able to navigate all these shadows. Reality, as it was created in a way that we can relate to it fully, that we can understand it, we can integrate it into our experience. But all the shadows that have been placed over reality for thousands of years, they don't bring us closer. They need to be navigated. These are the different types of klipot. The Tzal Moves is a klipa. It's not a reality. And this is why David HaMelech was not afraid of it, because everything that's a klipa, how do you overcome it? By realizing how unreal it is, by exposing it to the light of truth. The light of truth is that you're creating that thought, that perception, that reality within yourself. And the power that you have to create that thing is the power that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you. It's the life force that you have. It's the time that he gave you to live. So whether you're experiencing Tzal Moves or you're experiencing Tzila de Memnusa, both of them are life. Both of them are time. Both of them are existence. Both of them are going to become a part of your nature, going to become part of your experience. And so when we come into the Sukkah, we come dafka after Yom Kippur. We come dafka after we've eliminated the Tzal Moves. We've eliminated our ability to perceive evil. We've eliminated our expectation that something wrong is about to happen. Because as long as the person doesn't have kapara, as long as the person doesn't see himself as clean and as pure, in the back of his mind, something is about to go wrong. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to get him, one way or the other. So only after Yom Kippur, when a person can eliminate from his experience the Tzal Moves, there's no shadow of death, there's no death lurking, then he can come into the Tzila de Memnusa. This is the extreme opposite. The Tzila de Memnusa is the recognition that whatever is coming is going to be better than whatever happened till now. Whatever is coming is going to improve and allow you to understand your experience until this day. And that's the shadow. You don't have the thing itself. You don't have the full belief that you can really confidently proclaim that this is going to be the reality, but you're taking life from the tzell. You're taking life from the shadow. You're taking life from recognizing that whoever created life created it in such a way that it should work. And believing that the reason it doesn't work is because we're doing something wrong. We're not interacting with it in a healthy way. Just like if you find a person, you assume that you're going to be able to reason with them, you're going to be able to get to an understanding, you're going to be able to get with them on the same page because their intelligence is similar to yours, you come from the same species, you should think in similar ways, you should understand each other. The same way, when a person properly understands the whole, he understands the klal, he understands the one who created and manifested everything that is, his expectation should be that if he comes with the pure heart, he's going to be able to reason with him. He's going to be able to get to an understanding. He's going to be able to rely on whatever it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created to take care of him, to protect him. And so it is the truth. We're not trying to buy into some imagined reality. This is the real reality, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does take care of all our needs. V'raya, that we're all sitting here calmly. And Baruch Hashem, nobody is in severe pain, nobody is suffering in any obvious way, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created life in that way. And because we've gotten to a place where we don't violate each other physically, so physically we're all fine. So that proves to you that the way that nature created life works. So why is there so much psychological suffering? Why is there more emotional turmoil? That's because we're not living within that nature. We're offending that nature. And so living with Tzila de Mamnisa is recognizing that mitzad HaKadosh Baruch Hu, mitzad the one who created life, life was meant to be comfortable. Life was meant to be easy. Life was meant to be a joy. And we see this in the Torah in the beginning, and we see it in the end. In the beginning we see it because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man within the Gan Eden. So this says to us very clearly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu's intentions were. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's intentions were to give man a very nice time on this planet, until man complicated things. And we see it at the end because HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises us that what's going to happen at the end, tzadikim yoshvim, v'treseim b'reshem, v'nehenim miziv hashchina. What are these tzadikim doing? They're yoshvim v'nehenim. Those are the two things that they're doing. Everything else is just an explanation of what's happening, what's the experience that they're having. But essentially, what's the active form that their manifestation is taking? They're yoshvim v'nehenim. That's eternity. There's no achila, there's no shtia, that's not the point, that's not what they need. But they've arrived to a place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kavanah has already been fulfilled, and therefore they have no more suffering. So from here we see HaKadosh Baruch Hu's intentions very clearly. From the beginning all the way to the end, He created the world that should work. So why doesn't it work? Because we're doing it wrong, because we've misunderstood, because we're causing it, we're causing the suffering. So when we come out into the sukkah, we're connecting to something deeper. We're going out of our house, we're going out of the place that we've built for ourselves, the understandings that we've come to, the beliefs that we've ingrained in our minds that are restricting our way of seeing life, that are restricting our interaction with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we're coming into Tzila de Mamnusa, we're coming into the shadow of the truth, the shadow of the belief that can lead us and guide us to eventually be able to integrate that belief. And that belief is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way that He designed life, is perfect. It's perfect in every way. Begashmis and Berochnis. And when a person feels that experience in the Sikkah, then we say that he has appropriately invited the Ushpizin. Because who are the Ushpizin? The Ushpizin are the midas of the person that were ingrained within us through our avos and through our leaders and through the people who gave their lives in order to improve our experience, to improve our nature. Those people we invite into our sukkah and we say, you know why we're going to be zoicha, to be that person that's going to be able to experience what HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepared? Because of these people, because of the midas that they ingrained in us, because of the midas that are in our DNA. The way that we see life, we're going to have access to that perfection of Hoy Hashem Nemelech Al Kol Haaretz, B'yom Hahu Yeh Hashem Echad V'Shmo Echad.